One's ready. Go!
Cool. I love doing the intro. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You got the whole team here. We got a great one for you. We always tell you guys to try to focus on a single career field and then just try to put your 100% effort into that. This podcast is absolutely going to just burn all of that to the ground. So we brought on Jay from Endex Archery. Jay has an amazing story from going security forces, then to CADM, then to OSI, then doing OSI at a tier 1 special mission unit. Then that wasn't enough. He went to the FBI. He's got a crazy story behind him. He actually lost 6 of his teammates in Afghanistan in 2015, but from that trauma, he found archery and he founded Endex Archery. So I want you guys to go over and check out endexarchery.org. I want you to check out the Security Halt podcast right now. They're doing a fundraiser for Endex Archery. The whole goal here is to take veterans that are dealing with trauma and through archery, getting them to focus, to be present, and to work through their own issues. Jay has a love of archery. He's got a crazy backstory, and he's just a case study in being positive, saying yes, and finding new opportunities. He has served his entire life, and he continues to do so now through Endex Archery. This podcast is fantastic. But you know what we got to do first? We got to talk about some of our partners. Jerry, what partner do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about Hoist and their IV level.
Yeah.
You guys
God, I love that Hoist.
Have you tried this 5-star punch? I'm sure you have.
Oh,
yeah.
So good. That stuff goes right away.
My family calls it hey, Dad, go get me the America Hoist.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. I'm like, yeah, okay.
As they should. But dude, the kids love it too. I can't keep it in stock. I really can't. They pound it.
I got a toddler that crushes Hoist. You should see him. We have one of those little sippy cups that only kids know how to operate. I can't actually drink out of it. We put a little bit of Hoist in there, and shout out to Hoist. Thanks for getting rid of all your artificial dyes and stuff. Make America healthy again. Good job. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Hoist. They're always getting better. They're always pushing. They don't just release a product and they're like, this is good enough and we're making enough money. They're always trying to move it to the next step, and they keep hitting that next level and making it better. And that's why we love them, because it works.
And here's something for you. Do you know why they had to put the dye in it? Because originally it didn't have dye.
Because the military. Because the military asked.
Why do we mess everything up?
Why?
The military goes, well, we need a corresponding color with the corresponding flavor. And it's like, why?
The Marines will be so confused if it has a flavor and not a color. All right, guys.
Dropping crayons into
if grape isn't purple, how are people going to know? Get that. What are you talking about?
Dude, how broken is the military?
Crazy.
Anyway, drinkhoist.com, use the promo code One's Ready, but you don't have to go there. You don't have to wait to get it shipped. They sell it at Kroger, Safeways, HEBs, gas stations. It's in the commissary, so you don't have to wait for the shipment to come in online, but you're not going to get a discount if you go to one of those stores, but that's fine because you need hydration right now. Drinkhoist.com, promo code One's Ready. Now enjoy this episode. Later.
And that's usually how I steal the intro. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. It's the full team. We got our friend Jay from Endex Archery. We're going to talk about his amazing story, his connection to the Air Force. I will say I've had an OSI agent in my phone looking at my text messages before. So, Jay, I don't know how this relationship is going to get along, but I'm excited to hear about it. Welcome to the podcast, brother. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of gave him a little teaser as we were walking into this episode, but you started your life off in the Air Force, in security forces. Was there a terrible accident? Did you run out of options? How did that work?
No, it's actually a funny story. We were talking about your shirts too, so maybe the Cones and Quitters is the shirt you need to send. But so I was in delayed enlistment program. So, enlisted between my junior and senior year of high school, and had a guaranteed contract to be a SERE specialist. And recruiters being recruiters, they sell you a load of goods, and then you get to basic and you start to find out the truth, I guess. So for me, when I was going through basic, they were piloting that program where all the special tactics jobs were kind of in the same squadron. You wore the little blue armband on your right arm during PT, all that stuff. But what was great about it is they would have breakout sessions, and you would go over to Medina, or some of it was still on Lackland, but you got to interact with the cadre you were going to be seeing during INDOC. And so me and a handful of other guys who were, enrolled in the SERE program went over there. About the second time we did this, I started to realize SERE was not the job for me. I thought there was a lot more deployments. There was just a lot more to the job.
Oh, geez.
Was it soft SERE or just regular SERE? That's a joke. Soft SERE doesn't exist. Yeah, no, that's a joke.
Also,
It's
if your parents would have gone with you to the recruiting office, you wouldn't have made that mistake.
Right. Well, that's also how I landed in the Air Force. My dad, I wanted to join the Marine Corps. My dad was like, "No, you're joining the Air Force." But hey, best guidance I ever got, right? So anyway, while I was still in basic, I didn't even go to NDOC yet. Still in basic, and I said, "Hey, I don't want to do SERE." So I dropped from that and went to go see the guys at the MPF, and they said, "Hey, here's a list of jobs you can do." And I said, "Who's these guys running around with the vests and the guns? You know, at the time, you don't know they're rubber duckies. You think they're real guns." And they're like, "Oh, that's security forces." And then the famous words, right? It's like, "That's the infantry of the Air Force." And you're like, "Cool, I'll do that job." Because I was eliminated from any job that required a flight physical at that point, because the flight physical for SERE is different from, TAC P, PJ, CCT, or at least it was at the time. So I was told, "Hey, there's no more time to get a new flight physical. You're in I think I was in week 5. So pick a job." So I wound up with security forces, but it was for me, and that's one thing that I'll tell your listeners, right, is whether you get injured, whether you drop on request, or whether you're in a situation like mine where you sign up for a job and it turns out not to be the job you want. Your main goal when it comes to joining the Air Force should be service first. And one, what can I do for the Air Force, but also what can I get out of the Air Force? And I'll say that starting in security forces, up to now, I've had such an incredible career. For me, I didn't know I was going to love the law enforcement profession, but security forces kind of ignited that spark. And I've been in law enforcement for 18 years now. And I just had some really incredible opportunities. I'll say some of the most impressive people I've met in the Air Force in my career have been defenders. But for every one of those guys, there's also 10 guys that you're like, "Who ties your shoes every morning?" But I think,
well, I think one of the things that gets lost, right? Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that gets lost for people is the amount of opportunities that there are. It's not like you just become security forces and that's it, right? Like there are a bunch of branches off that tree. If you keep working and you are willing to volunteer for a bunch more stuff, like there's a million opportunities out there. And security forces is a great example of, while you may think you know what security forces is, and the beginning is much the same for, I think, almost everybody, where you can go from there if you're willing is pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'd say that goes for any career field in the Air Force. There's opportunities there to do amazing things for your country. And a lot of it some of it has to do with luck, but a lot of it has to do with, what you put in, you get out. So I would encourage anyone, if you're curious, if you think law enforcement might be the job for you, don't look down on security forces just because it has, kind of a negative reputation. I don't regret a single minute of it.
But for serious, Jay, when you're in security forces tech school and the beginning of your career, there's a lot of people around that are like, "This is stupid. I can't wait to get out. My recruiter lied to me. This should be different than what it is." Like, how do you rise above that wave of negativity? And it's not just security forces. I think that's a lot of places in the Air Force. How do you rise above that and still chase, something more the way that you did?
Well, for me, I'd wanted to join the military since I was 6 years old. I went to my first air show down in New Orleans, Louisiana, and knew from that point on I was joining the military. So just being there and getting the opportunity to serve, my parallel is my brother is a musician.
Jay, at that air show, was it the Thunderbirds? Is that what got you?
No, it was the Blue Angels.
Oh, go figure. Okay, cool. Yeah. Knew it. Shout out to my Thunderbirds. Yeah. You guys missed one.
Missed one.
Oh my God.
No, I mean, influences like Top Gun, all that stuff. I didn't join the Navy because my grandpa was in the Navy. He's like, "You don't want to be on a boat for 6 months or a year." Or whatever. I'm like, "No, you're right."
Yeah.
But wanted to join the Air Force very early. My brother, he took a completely separate path, and he was a musician, and he was in California doing the rock star thing. But every day that I got to wake up and put on the uniform, I felt like a rock star. I felt like I was walking out to those screaming fans. So for me, it was very easy to stay positive because I was living my dream.
Man, how much did you annoy all the people around you when you're just out there with that positivity? Like, "I'm here for it, guys. Like, law enforcement is going to be great." And they're like, "Man, who is this guy? Like, what?" And did you eventually win people over? Like, how did you end up with that? Because you're a positive guy. There are the naysayers. And then like, did you end up with like a group of people that ended up doing, friends of yours that ended up going further in security forces, maybe the OSI route or any of that other stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I say, most of the guys that I came up with through security forces and some of those impressive guys I mentioned, they're either still doing great things or went on to do great things. I've got a buddy, I think he's getting ready to put on senior if he hadn't already. Dude got his PhD. And if you hear this guy's story, how he grew up, that dude didn't stand a chance until he joined the Air Force. And even then, he was like, early on in his career, he just didn't think he was going to make much of himself. But he had a perspective change, and he credits me with forcing him to start his first college experience, and now he's a doctor. So again, I don't know. Like I said, I probably did annoy quite a few people with the positivity, but typically I can wear them down and make allies out of them.
Good, good for you.
Well, you talked about it, being a bad situations and getting people from all walks of life. And I mean, we've had somebody, they didn't come on, but they were out in Tampa when I used to live there. It was a dude that was showing up to development sessions for Air Force Special Warfare. And he was no kidding homeless. He was 17 or 18 and living under a bridge, but he was making his way to development sessions. He was in shape. He was trying to better himself and trying to get a better life for himself. And like you're right, whether it's security forces or maintenance or POL, fuels or like whatever it is. Aaron actually had a good rant on it the other day about you're still serving your country,
right?
And that's the biggest thing. And so I think that positivity is awesome. And I'm all about going around with a PMA, positive mental attitude. Everybody knows that, right?
Like, did you find him because he was under your bridge, Jared? Was that your bridge that you were supposed to be in?
My pot of gold was under there, and I had to protect it. And he was trying to come take it.
Yeah, I ran into this bridge troll. He told me to come to the beach this morning. This is weird. Yeah. But no, I'll blow your minds real quick too, because I did. There's definitely one person I won over in tech school, and that's my current wife, my only wife. But yeah, we met in tech school, and we're 17 years going strong. So
you are, man, we do so much to try to tell people not to get into tech school romances, and now we're gonna have to answer this question. Come on,
Jason's an
brother.
unusual human, everybody.
Yeah,
most of them don't work out. But
disclaimer, guys, listen: the stripper doesn't love you, and the tech school girlfriend isn't going to be there 17 years later. Okay, now I know that's right. You never say always or never, but dang it, Jay.
No, I tend to be a bit of a contrarian, and that. Hey, dude, I loved security forces. I bled blue. I was proud of everything I did, and there was this really cheesy commercial that came out, probably 10 years ago now. And it's like the end of the commercial was like those quiet nights, when nothing goes boom, you're welcome. And I was just like, yes, man. Yes, that's us. Yeah, but from there, wanting to do more. I came back from my first deployment to Afghanistan, and shortly after that, got linked up with our combat arms dudes and decided that's the route I wanted to go. Mostly because at the time they had the biggest bonus in security forces, but then while I'm in the tech school, they switched it to K9. So I didn't get much of a bonus. But
man,
anyway,
because you hadn't graduated, they hadn't swapped over your AFSC yet, huh?
That's right. Yeah, I didn't have my B shred yet.
No.
So we had a 4 multiplier when I, got the contract to go to school, and then by the end of school we had a 1 multiplier, and K9 had a 4.
Dude.
But
man, that's rough.
Yeah, in spite of that though, best job I ever had. There are days even now that I wish I would not have left combat arms, because one, I found a love for public speaking and teaching there. I grew up knee high to a grasshopper, squirrel hunting, all that stuff, all the things, young Cajun boys do. And so I'd always loved guns, but there, really got an understanding for weapons and tactics, and just had a blast in your job. I mean, it's the easiest job to get enjoyment out of. You show up in the morning, you teach a pistol course or a rifle course, you go out to the range. Then after that, you've got your proficiency fire, you've got weapons maintenance. We jump on 4-wheelers and go do perimeter patrols. Just a great career field. But something funny happened in that time, and I think this will resonate with some of your listeners as well, because a lot of people, when they look at special warfare or any special operations job across the military, it's because they want to be in the shit. They want to go to war. They want to fight. And I'll say that a lot of the military, sure, in the soft career fields, you've got a better chance of seeing combat. But I know I've worked with PJs who don't have a combat action ribbon. But when I was a combat arms instructor, I was at Maxwell, and we had the Air Force JAG school there. So there's this major that comes through, and somehow this major had made it all the way up to that rank without ever deploying. So he's going on his first deployment. He's nervous. He's like, I've never fired an M4 before. So we qualify him. 6 months later, he comes back with this incredible story. This dude, he's working out of, it might have been Bagram. I don't remember where he was, but anyway, so he's working out of a big base like Bagram. And this National Guard unit rips in, and they're in a fob somewhere, and they left their state without writing a will. So the Army's freaking out. Hey, we got to get these guys wills. Like, this is a requirement. So they tell this major, hey, you're going to jump on the next supply convoy, and you're going to go write wills all day, and then you'll come back to base. He's like, all right, cool.
Are you pointing at me? Because no.
So this dude's they're trucking out to this fob. They get hit with a complex IED attack, ambush, the whole 9 yards, and this dude jumps out of his truck. They're disabled. I think he drops like 9 bodies. He comes back with a Bronze Star with Valor, combat action, Purple Heart. So he shows back up to the Cadam range when he gets back, and he's like thanking us, like, your training saved my life. And we're just like, this dude, this JAG major is getting into the shit. And security forces it's very hua, right? You think you're a snake eater, you're there to cut the head off the snake of terror. And it's like, usually when you deploy, I was flying around on C-130s, or you're sitting in a tower, and not much happens. So the point of that whole story is to say, like, dude, there's no guarantee you're going to see action. You shouldn't romanticize warfare. And, as someone who's carried and buried 6 of my friends, 6 of my teammates, it's also something you shouldn't wish for. But, that's why we train. That's why we prepare. That's why we have the Airman's Creed. You are a warrior because it could happen anytime, anywhere, and it doesn't matter what your job is. You could be an Air Force JAG and get into it, and you could be a PJ and never see combat. So
I'll tell you right now, I've done all that, and I'm still drinking haterade right now on that, dude. Like, man,
100%.
jealousy level is like, I got an ID, cool, hopped out, murked 9 dudes. Got shot in the process, or what,
whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And then
I'm
I
the
still
coolest guy at every party now.
Yeah, right.
Went back to Bagram, just process the wills.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Didn't lose a single will on
Just
that
did my day job. No big deal. Oh, that's cool. You guys have combat as your primary duty. That's cool. I did my primary duty and your job better, and then got decorated for it. Whatever. No big deal.
Yeah. You know who didn't have wills that day? Taliban.
That's right.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, their admin processes are super immature. They're a pretty young organization comparatively. So let's not shame the Taliban too much. They somehow got $7 billion of our equipment pretty good. They didn't need wills for that, my dude.
Yeah, dude. Worst trade deal in the history of trade deals, right there.
I wonder
we're still ever.
I wonder what the ROE brief from the Taliban JAG sounds like. I would want to. That is actually the only JAG brief that I ever want to be involved in. Is the Taliban ROE JAG brief. Sorry.
I'm sure it's a blast.
Yeah. Hey, there it is. All right. So if you love, combat arms so much, which the public speaking, and I can relate to the public speaking and the instructorship side of it, and seeing the light bulb go off.
Mm-hmm.
What made you kind of take the OSI route?
I had a sense, or I guess I lacked a sense of purpose in that job. It's there, and what we used to tell ourselves is like, look, we're the guys training the war fighters. We're the guys making sure that people can go down range and accomplish the mission. But for me, I wanted a more direct role. I was still full of piss and vinegar, and again, thought I was there to cut the head off the snake of terror. So I started looking at retraining. I was actually entertaining going into TAC P. I had a really good buddy who was at that time had just become a soft TAC P, so he was at the 21st out in Pope. Was just telling me all the good things about the job. So I started looking in that direction, and then I met a guy named Chester McBride, Chester was a former 820th Security Forces guy who became an agent. Was built like a brick shithouse, and he came out to the range one day, and this dude could just flat out shoot. So he was an impressive person. So I started talking to him about OSI, and he seemed to really enjoy the job. So he started kind of my recruitment there. I guess there was still some of that recruiter aspect to it, because I get this pitch from another guy, and he was like, "Look, he's like, yeah, you can go TAC P. That job's cool, but their job only happens downrange. It's like OSI has a mission 24/7, whether you're downrange or home station. You're doing good work." And he's like, "And we've got this thing called the Anti-Terrorism Specialty Team, and that's like OSI's version of HRT."
Wait. The fact that you never get a break was a selling point?
Yeah, man. It was just that, to me, the idea of constantly having purpose, constantly having a mission sounded cool. And now I know much differently, right? Like, TAC Ps aren't just hanging out when they're back home.
Yeah, they are.
Nobody is, but that's kind of how it was sold to me.
There's no one lazier than TAC Ps. Okay,
you can't even swim, dorks.
Yeah,
kidding. We're kidding, TAC P. We're kidding. Get your panties out of a bunch. Go hit the pool, you nerds.
Pulling their boots off desks right now, being like standing up from their chairs that they were relaxing in, being like, "What?"
Yeah, when I show up
lazy.
This security forces nerd.
Nerd. So what was that transition like into OSI? So the recruitment brief obviously stuck with you. You were obviously swayed both by personal experience and by, the siren song of the job. So as you got into OSI and some of those perceptions fell away, right? Like 24/7 is cool until you're doing 24/7 work. So how was the OSI gig for you?
Well, and like anything, man, you get the recruitment brief. You think it's like that scene from 21 Jump Street where, it's like, you ready for a lifetime of being badass motherfuckers. And then you get to the job and you're like, oh no, this is it. But I'll say, the Air Force, like in most career fields, they do a really good job. So you attend the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center alongside the ATF, the U.S. Marshals, Secret Service, you name it. You become a federal agent, even though you're still an active duty service member. So you get to run those investigations, and OSI, like security forces, has a lot of opportunities you can take advantage of. If you're into forensics, you can become a forensic scientist or a forensic science consultant. I was more leaning towards the counter intel and counterterrorism missions. So, you can specialize in counterintelligence and become a case officer. You can become a drug expert. I've got a buddy of mine and the co-founder of my nonprofit. He spent 12 years as a child forensic interviewer and worked crimes against children. I think one of the noblest missions that we have, protecting the most vulnerable. So, you can really dig in and know it's not kicking down doors every day. But neither was the FBI once I got there, so I think everything in moderation. And again, you get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so this is going to be crazy. And again, Jay, you're really screwing us up here. We usually have a narrative where we want people to focus on stuff. Like, you're not going to be a PJ, then a crow, then a doctor, then an astronaut. But unfortunately, I got to go into this. So you ended up working at one of the tier 1 specialty units over at the AFSOC GSU. What made the move from OSI over to that highly specialized unit on the East Coast?
Yeah, I guess that was a little bit of providence. And I'll back up a little bit because this story has a lead in. But 2015, I was deployed to Bagram as an OSI agent. That's Task Force Crimson. Chester was there with me, the guy who recruited me into OSI. One of my classmates from FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Michael Cinco, was my roommate on that deployment. A guy named Pete Taub, he and I went through the High Value Detainee Interrogation Group. That's a joint FBI-CIA program. We went through their advanced interviewing course. So, a lot of these guys I'd known really well for a long time. And unfortunately, they lost their life on December 21st, 2015 to a motorcycle-borne IED. So we lost 6 team members altogether. And OSI's mission downrange, again, you've got a lot of different things you can do, but our core mission at the task force level is keeping the airfield green. Planes can't take off, bombs can't get dropped, troops can't get moved if we've got incoming and planes just can't take off. So we were looking for the rocket facilitators, the Taliban and other groups who were launching rockets onto the base, and we were looking for IED emplacements as well. So this mission for me, my roommate Cinco actually planned this mission. You'd roll out with 2 agents, an interpreter, and then a security forces tactical security element. But we started somewhere during that deployment bringing an additional 2 agents and a linguist with us, just for, force multipliers. So me and my partner were supposed to be that second agent team on the ground. But I went to Cinco about 2 weeks before and said, hey man, me and my partner have like 3 source meets this week. We've got 2 outside the wire missions of our own. Can you bring the other team, Team Thunder? So we were broken into 4 teams: Lightning, Thunder, Hurricane, and Cyclone. So I said, hey, can you bring Thunder with you? So my perspective of that mission is my buddy Pete, died where I should have been standing. But afterwards, in the following probably 36 hours for me, because of the way I felt, it was nose to the grindstone, just out for vengeance. We were working with 3rd Special Forces Group out there, and one of their guys came to us and just said, hey man, like, we're going to kill every last one of these guys that was responsible. So I dug in and got to work, and we were very successful in that mission. We tracked down every member of that cell, save for one who escaped into Pakistan and got I think 3 or 4 years later. But with that, during that process, OSI flew in an operational psychologist to kind of evaluate everyone on the ground and see, who had TBIs, who had PTSD and needed to go home, and who was still fit to fight. So I guess I made an impression on this doc, because after the deployment, I get back home to Alaska, and I get orders to OSI headquarters just to be a paper jockey. And I'm like, this is not what I want. And I guess she found out, because she gives me a call one day and she says, hey, we're trying out this new thing. I think you're the right man for the job. I'd like you to come down here and try out for this position. And I'm like, well, what is it? She says, well, we can't talk about it yet. I said, well, where is it? She said, you'll be coming to Fort Bragg. So at that, then I had an idea of kind of what I'd be getting into.
Did your Uber driver know exactly where to take you, though? Because it's always funny that they know where the gate's at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So went down and assessed, the Special Tactics Group has a couple different squadrons underneath it. I'd say probably the most well-known is the but there's a sister squadron that lives in there. And that's what I assessed for. And the most I'll say about it is it was, I don't know, it was like recce type work. It's clandestine in nature, and it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of different people on the teams from different disciplines, including, operators coming over from but ultimately, we were learning cool, sneaky shit. And that's kind of part of OSI's core CFETP. Our core our job skills are things like source handling, surveillance, covert communications. So it fit in well with, that squadron. So I was blessed to make it through selection and spent a couple of years there on a team, doing really incredible work.
And then you were like, FBI. I mean, I just assume that's how it happened. You're like, I'm done here.
Well, it just, I don't know. For me, that was kind of the pinnacle of my career, right? Like I had reached the mountaintop. I was in this place, and I suffered a lot from imposter syndrome while I was there, because I'm walking around. I felt like an ant in a valley of giants, and there's dudes, from our chief all the way down to my team leaders. There's books written about these guys. Not them specifically, but the operations that these dudes were a part of that you get read into and you're like, holy crap, you were there for that? Who am I, dude? I'm just an OSI dude. I've done nothing. But I don't know, somehow, some way, they saw it fit for me to stand with those dudes. So I'm forever grateful. But when it was time to leave that unit, because unfortunately, I was still administratively controlled by OSI. I was OpCon and TACON to that unit, but AdCon to OSI, and OSI being them said, hey man, you've got all this great experience. You just went through all this training. It's time for you to come to headquarters, and spread some of that knowledge. And I said, no, I think it's time for me to leave.
No, this is my knowledge. I will not be spreading it around. Thank you, though. I'm out. I'm just kidding. I'm sure you're
Well, and,
much
and
nicer
part
than
of
that.
that, now that I'm a senior NCO and I look back on it, I think, yeah, it's a good move from them. I was, looking at it now, I am somebody I would have liked to see at the headquarters level pushing some more of those initiatives. But at the time, for me, it was still very personal, and I wanted to be in the fight. I wasn't ready to take up that mantle of leadership, and I think, being reflective, had I been made a leader at that time, I would have tried to micromanage. My troops would have hated me for it, because I still was very much involved in the day-to-day mission at the tactical level. So, yeah, being where we were, you're in that community, you get a lot of exposure to different units, and one of those being FBI HRT. So I made some friends over there, and they were like, "Hey, man, like, you're coming up on an ETS. Why don't you come to the bureau and try out for HRT and all that stuff?" So it was the right time, right moment. Seemed like a natural progression for me to go from the pinnacle of my military service to, I guess I'll say, the big leagues of law enforcement.
Right. And for people that aren't tracking, what is a HRT? As you take a drink, I'm like the worst waiter of all time.
No, you're good. So HRT is the FBI's hostage rescue team, and that is, you could say it's almost an equivalent to some of our tier 1 units, but similar mission set, right? So it's the only civilian law enforcement counterterrorism team in our nation. They have that responsibility. And that's mostly because, units like Delta, SEAL Team 6, the 2-4, because of a law in the books called Posse Comitatus, they don't have authority within, our borders. They can cooperate, they can provide mutual assistance, but you don't want Delta running into a hotel after a bad dude, because they're not arresting anyone, you know what I mean? And
I kind of do. I want to see it.
Yeah. But that's what was presented, when it came to, it was right after the 84 Olympics, America's looking at like, well, crap, what if something like that happens here? We need a team. And, so these big wigs from the government go down and they watch Delta clear a shoot house, and someone asks like, well, where's your handcuffs? And they're like, we don't have handcuffs. Everyone in here's dying.
Zip ties. Everybody's dying.
Yeah. And you've got some politician that's like, whoa, we can't do that. So HRT was born. And they're a very elite level unit. I would not say that they are, equivalent to Delta or any of these other teams, but as far as a full-time tactical unit goes in law enforcement, I don't know. It's hard to beat those guys.
Yeah. Well, man. Okay, so I gotta pause here for a second, just to kind of like, dude, you've done security forces, combat arms, then OSI, and then you went to the special mission unit, and then you did FBI HRT. Like,
yeah, I did not do HRT.
Okay, you went to the FBI.
Yeah. I did go to the FBI. Yeah.
What do we tell you, Jason? What do we tell you about not giving people hope that they can do it all? We try to manage expectations here. You're really doing a bad job.
Well, I guess this is my pitch for OSI, right? Because, and it'll go back to my previous comments, is when it comes to being recruited into OSI, I like to use the term, this is a quote from Abraham Lincoln, but it says, whatever you're going to be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'd be nice if OSI could only recruit from special warfare, right? Because there's some pretty hard charging, there's some outstanding individuals in those career fields. But dude, I guarantee that there is an Air Force medic out there who's got the drive, the brain power, the stamina to crush it, but chose to be a medic. There's maintainers out there that are just really impressive dudes. And that's what OSI is looking for, is wherever you are in your career, who's the best? Typically when OSI shows up to recruit somebody, the commander's just shaking his head because he's like, you're coming after my best guy, and I know it. You're coming after, my wing airman of the year or whatever it is. But that is what we want. And you see that in OSI, when we still had promotion testing, it was a nightmare because I went to public school in South Louisiana. And we've got, staff sergeants who are working on their masters and their doctorate. We've got enlisted airmen who want to do the job of an enlisted airman that have doctorates. And it's like, why don't you go commission? And they're like, because I don't want to do that. I want to do this.
I want to go back to the beginning and just remind everybody that this all started because he said no to SERE. So I don't know what that means. Just want to point it out real quick.
It's
Hey,
just
look,
it's just a data point. That's all it is. It's a
Yeah,
data
in
point.
hindsight, that's a great
No
job.
opinion there. Yeah.
You're a professional Boy Scout. You hang out in the woods all day, kill chickens, tie people up. Like, man, that would have been a cool job. But yeah,
Oh man, yeah, dude, the SERE dudes are gonna be stewing about this.
I was just pointing it out. I didn't say anything bad about SERE.
No,
And how
no.
saying
Again,
no to SERE led to, like, tier SMU level success or anything.
Fact check true. Listen, you
throwing it
can't,
out there.
yeah, they don't care about your feelings, man. Listen, he said no to SERE and look at his career. I can't say it caused it, but I can definitely draw a correlation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that you were never going to be soft SERE, like you just didn't have what it took. So
right.
I mean, it's just the reality of it, and I'm glad you recognize that. So like, kudos to you, for recognizing that you don't have what it takes to be special operations force SERE. So,
Well, I
Jay,
mean,
did you have any
from-
idea you were going to be on such a petty podcast today, or was that just something you happened to do?
I've watched quite a few episodes, so
Okay.
I'm happy you guys aren't toning it down.
no.
But yeah, new right off the bat. There was this one SERE instructor during one of our little sessions, and there's this one guy talking at us, and another guy was just on the pull-up bar, and for like a solid 20 minutes, he's just doing pull-ups. And at
That's
first,
cool.
you were like, "Man, this guy's impressive," but after like, I don't know, when he's in his 30s, you're like, "This dude's weird." I knew right then, I'm out. This ain't for me, guys.
He's just looking at you in the eyes.
Yeah.
It's just knocking him out.
Just getting them the whole time, and you're like, "What?"
That is super weird. I just
weird.
went down a rabbit hole in my head of all the weird things. Like,
All right, guys, we're going to give this briefing. Justin, get on the pull-up bars. Don't say anything.
He didn't say a word, just did pull-ups. I hope either he or someone who was with me that day hears this and they're like, "Yeah, I remember that. Super
That
weird."
was really weird.
He's busy killing a rabbit right now. He's like, that wasn't weird, as he makes the rabbit talk to his students.
Right. Yeah. Sewing it into a pillow.
All right, I'm gonna get us
That
back.
wasn't weird, was it? No, it wasn't. That guy's weird. I knew it.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, you're being
so
weird.
you are the founder, or I don't want to give it solely to you because maybe I don't want to cut somebody out if there was a co-founder, but you're the founder of Endex. And what is, like, how did you come up with this, and what is Endex all about?
Yeah. So Endex was founded by myself and my co-founder Ray Vickers. He was the child forensic interviewer I told you about. It was kind of, for me, it was born out of necessity. So like I told you guys, December 21st, 2015, lost 6 of my teammates, and obviously came home from that deployment, and just started seeing down that hole, right? That survivor's guilt, that depression, PTSD, all that stuff, just wasn't in a good place. I say the two things that kept me grounded were my faith and a bow and arrow. It goes back to this, one day I had to force myself to get out of the house. Thankfully the Air Force, even though we all roll our eyes at all the annual training and the briefings you've got to get, about resiliency and suicide awareness, when I was in that, phase of my life, all of that training, started to kind of come back, and so I knew what was going on. So long story short, I picked up a bow, and I found healing in that. I got out of my own head, and the bow, one, made me acknowledge that really something's going on with me. It made me walk into my commander's office and say, "Hey, I need help." It made me walk into the med group and go seek, some mental health assistance. And that's my caveat here too, is, I was an OSI agent, a gun toter every day, top secret clearance. Mental health, going to see the mental health clinic, had no negative effects on my career. So for anyone listening and you hear all the stories like, "Oh, if you go to med group, they're going to take your gun, they're going to take your clearance," dude, it's not true. Especially if you are seeking help, and you're aiming to get better. So not long after, I left the military in June. In July, I started Quantico. Not long after graduating Quantico, I got with Ray, and Ray had also found healing with, the stuff that he'd been experiencing with crimes against children, and he was shooting a bow to help out as well. So we just kind of got together and we're like, "Dude, let's start doing this. Like, let's start mentoring dudes, military members, veterans, cops, firefighters, you name it. Let's find dudes and get them into archery, and maybe it'll help them like it helps us." And that quickly made me feel like crap because, as Aaron's finding out, if you want like a premium bow setup, which most guys like us do, not because you got to have the greatest stuff, but because we value gear. And in some cases, gear has saved our lives. So when it comes to buying stuff, we want the best you can get. Well, when it comes to an archery setup, the best you can get usually will run you anywhere between, I don't know, $1,800 and $3,000, depending on what type of accessories you get.
What?
So me convincing a guy, hey man, archery is going to help you, and then watching them spend that type of money made me feel like crap.
Oh, I bet.
Well, but that leads into, perfectly into a good question. Is like, well, why archery? Why is shooting a bow so good for people recovering from loss? Like, what is it about archery that helps guide them through the recovery, which is the whole purpose of Endex?
Right. So it's one of those modalities, like many things, but it kind of mimics a form of meditation, because when you shoot a bow and when you shoot a bow correctly, you kind of have to turn everything off. It's a total mind body experience. You're focused. And what that allows our brain to do is start to process some of that trauma. Think of when you're going through trauma, I call it trauma goggles. That's what's at the forefront of your mind. You're walking around, you may be semi-present in life, but that trauma is always at the forefront. Well, when you shoot a bow or you get into fly casting, you start doing yoga, you start meditating, you do Tai Chi, those goggles come off and you become present in the moment, and it allows your subconscious to do the work that it needs to do to get through that blockage. So it's not just archery, but for me, archery was the tool that I chose. And what I tell people is there's a moment that happens whenever you're at full draw with a bow, you're staring at your target, you're getting ready to fire. There's a moment of clarity right before that shot where you're not happy, you're not sad, you're just at peace. And we kind of use that as an analogy for processing trauma in some of these discussions we have. And it's finding peace where you are in the moment and what that can do for you and your mind and body.
Yeah, and I loved all the photos. Guys, I brought up the website earlier, but it's endexarchery.org. Go check them out. They've got everything from home to the team to the future of Endex and ways that you can donate. I love seeing the pictures on there for jiu-jitsu. Like, obviously, I've shot a bow a couple times. I totally align with what you're talking about. Like, in order to line up that perfect shot, you really have to be present and only thinking about that in the moment. Jiu-jitsu is the same way. The second that you start letting your mind wander on other stuff is the second somebody tries to fold your clothes while you're still working, while you're still wearing them in there. That presence is really important, and it's important to be present and then share that with your team. I assume that when you have these events, people start talking about shots they missed or things they could have done better, and that mentorship, that guidance, that community, that has to be a huge aspect of it. What kind of positive outputs have you seen from people, especially like when people that have never shot a bow before and then they come to you excited after that event? What are some of those success stories that you can share?
Yeah. So, the amount of people now that we've worked with, we call them our heroes, the amount of heroes we've worked with that have just come back and said, look, man, like, I didn't know how much I needed this. And they're just grateful. But, our program centers around 3 core facets. The top of the pyramid is going to be mental and spiritual wellness. Then we focus on physical wellness and social wellness, that community. And it's really, people can focus on just one of those and get a lot out of it. When you combine all 3, and that social wellness aspect comes in, you get a community of people who are willing to help, or good people, but you get that camaraderie that a lot of service members, especially after they leave the service, they miss. Because like you were talking about, Aaron, you're on a range and you're shooting for a 12 and you hit a 10. You might still be happy with a 10, but your buddy's going to lean in and be like, hey, you suck. Right. And you're just going to laugh about it,
Well, and it's, our good friend Scott Zastro, who was actually he was an 18 Delta, he's a PA now, but he was one of the guys that went in on the triple nickel, right? So, the first dudes in Afghanistan, the horse soldiers. And he talked about golf in the same way. He was like, listen, I can have the best round of golf in my life. He was like, I can hit a par, I can hit the best round that I've ever shot. But if I screwed up a chip on 13, and I could have actually been a one shot better had I not screwed that chip up, I will stay at that the best round of my life. I will stay after and I will chip for 2 hours and I will try to figure it out. I assume that archery is that same way. Like, man, if I would have just hit that, 12, if I'd have just been a little bit more focused, I could have hit that 12 and not that 10. I assume that those are the same things. They have parallels there.
Yeah, parallels, and another parallel. It's those micro dopamine hits too. Whenever you're shooting archery, every time your arrow hits that little dot you're aiming for, that's a micro dopamine hit. But it's also an achievement for our brain, because a lot of people dealing with trauma, like, they need those little wins. So to fully answer your question, Aaron, I've had dudes who in the past couldn't leave their house, couldn't get within 100 yards of their house, who now go out alone grocery shopping, because I've introduced them to one. I've let them overcome challenges with the bow, but two, introduce them to a community, and they start to trust again. I've had people develop closer relationships with their spouses and be able to start talking about some of the things they experienced downrange because of a bow. I've had people who, were lost and just praying for it, like, hey, I need people in my life, who are now the happiest guys you've ever met, again, because of a bow. So it's really incredible what a bow can do. But for me, it's not just about the bow. It's everything. The bow gets you in the door, you see it, and you're like, hey, that's cool, I'll try archery. But then we can introduce you to all these other things, and really just put you on a path to wellness. And that's where the name comes from. Anyone in the military or law enforcement knows that Index stands for end of exercise. For me, it was ending the exercise and futility that is the drugs, the alcohol, the risky behavior, the self-isolation, all those negative behaviors that people turn to when it comes to trauma. Hey, Index, here's a bow. And I guess that leads into, where we're going. Right now, we're doing a lot of one-on-one mentorship. Our goal for this year is to serve 20 heroes. But our 5-year plan is to build a wellness center here in Central Virginia. And it's going to be run similar to like a post-deployment, workup. Or for me, it was FBI does a post-critical incident seminar. Anytime you're involved in a shooting or something like that, you go to this seminar. And for me, it was 5 days of just being introduced to all these different modalities. It was yoga, Tai Chi, massage therapy, meditation, Reiki, all kinds of things. So I want to duplicate that here in Virginia, because obviously I hand someone a bow the first morning of our event. They probably got 2 good hours of instruction before they're smoked, and they're like, all right, we need to take a break. So then what do you do? So we're just going to introduce them to all these different tools that they could throw in their toolbox. Every tool is not right for somebody, but it's my hopes that they can walk away with a bow plus at least one extra wellness modality and a new perspective and outlook on life.
Yeah, man, thanks for doing what you're doing, dude.
It's an honor.
I know it's and one, it's not an easy thing to set up. It's also not easy to go through for yourself. It's not easy for the folks that are coming out to you when you see, these people that used to, I don't want to say used to be on top of their game, but like they used to be doing the job, and now they're on the back end of that, they're dealing with, I guess, the repercussions, for lack of a better word, of everything that they dealt with. So thanks for doing that.
No, it's an honor. And again, it's that positivity, right? I think positivity is a choice. And somehow I was able to take the worst day of my life and turn it into the best thing I've ever done. And that is Index, from losing my teammates to what we're doing now. I could have very well stayed in a bottle or gone way, way deeper down that dark hole. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you guys today. But I think, one, acknowledging and calling ourselves on our own bullshit, and not saying like, hey, I'm fine. But then doing something about it. And I think we're all capable of that.
Yeah. So I was perusing your staff, and I noticed that Dr. Lee Kaler is on your board. Like, is like, we just had her on.
Yeah.
Is that how we got linked up? Because she was fantastic. Yes. Okay.
It was. They were on the same email. Yeah. She was awesome. Crushing it. Yeah.
She's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel bad about your sleep habits?
Her and I have had many discussions about my sleep habits. Yeah, I'm a chronic offender.
The only part of that episode, like my caffeine tolerance and my caffeine ingestion on any single day, like I felt shamed. Like, you're not supposed to internalize something that somebody says that wasn't directed directly at you. However, I did. The only thing from that episode that I got that I was like, oh, I'm doing it the right way, is I've had a sunrise alarm for a while, but apparently I overpaid because, of course, to your note about the gear, When I looked for a sunrise alarm, I was like, well, obviously I have to pay for the $120 one. She was like, don't spend more than $30. I was like, shit, failed again.
Yeah.
Man,
Well,
she was saying negative things about caffeine. I'm glad I wasn't there for that episode. You know what I mean? That would have been hurtful.
Well, I started asking her about like micro naps, you know, the split second nap, and you dream of that. And she definitely is like, okay, that's concerning. I felt afterwards she was actually going to go like, hey,
Like you're
you and I, we
narcoleptic.
need to sit down for a straight up consult. I'm gonna need like 6 sessions with you because you're not doing right.
Right. Yeah, this is not okay.
Yes. And then she doesn't like naps. She doesn't agree with naps. And I'm like, okay, now that's you're crossing some lines now.
Look,
And look, I've seen it. Like, she legit practices what she preaches, and that chick will be up at 6 a.m, just as chipper and happy as ever because she slept great. She's a ray of sunshine. I'm like, well, hey, it's proof's in the pudding, right?
yeah, good for her. You know, I was looking through your site too, and I want to know what's the connection between Index and the American bison.
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys have heard the story of the bison or the story of the buffalo. You know, they're the only animal on the plains that when a storm is coming, they will turn and face it and run straight through it. You know, the buffalo knows that they're going to get through the storm quicker that way versus trying to outrun it. You're not going to outrun the storm. So in any of our gear, you'll see the buffalo is facing to the left as if it were a timeline, and that storm is that trauma. It's what's behind you that you've been running from. So we challenge all of our heroes to be a buffalo, be a bison. We're going to turn with you and face that storm, and we're going to get through it.
No,
Man, I absolutely connect with that. We actually we had the distinct privilege of sitting down with UFC legend Don Fry. And Don Fry and I had that exact same conversation. It's a fantastic thing. I love the imagery of the buffalo, what it represents. Jay,
Absolutely.
man, from security forces, like that wasn't enough. OSI, that wasn't enough. FBI, that wasn't enough. Tier 1 unit, that wasn't enough. Man, you have continued to serve and you've continued to give back to your teammates. We love that here, and that's what we're all about. Man, what are your hopes for Endex in the future? Where do you want to see the project grow?
Well, like I said, the big goal is to build our wellness center here in Virginia. It's going to take a lot of donations and a lot of charity from the community here, but I know that it's going to get done. We're going to crush it. But the other thing is through our ambassador program is building smaller index communities throughout the nation and letting people, you know, within their own community make Index look like whatever it needs to look like there.
Yeah. And one of those ambassadors, close friend of the podcast, Denny Caballero, we've been on his podcast, the Security Halt podcast and Security Halt Media. Denny is a savage. You're currently running a fundraiser with Denny as one of your new ambassadors. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us where we can find Denny over at Security Halt.
Yeah. So check Instagram is where we do most of our content. So Security Halt started the fundraiser on there. I think you can also see it on Facebook, but definitely check Instagram and check out Denny's page as well. His podcast is amazing, and he's doing a lot to bring awareness for not just mental health, but you know, any struggle that veterans are having. But yeah, go over to Instagram, either Denny's page or the Endex Archery Instagram page, and you'll see the little donate button. But you can also donate straight through our website, indexarchery.org. There's a donate tab, and if you just scroll down to the bottom, you know, we take PayPal, Venmo, all these things. If you guys are already into archery, we have 2 events this month. The Total Archery Challenge. We're going to be in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. We'll have a booth set up. Look for the big black and white tent with the buffaloes. We'll be running some pretty sick raffles thanks to a lot of our partners. And that's usually one of our biggest fundraisers of the year. You know, just a quick note on that. Last year we were in Georgia at the Total Archery Challenge, and this Marine Corps veteran came up. We had this shabby little tent last year. Wasn't much, but he heard about our mission. He liked what we were doing. This dude had a brand new bow in his hands that he had built for the 3-day course. And when he came off the mountain on the 3rd day, he walks over and he handed me this, you know, probably $2,000 setup and said, "Here, man, give this to a hero." And that was replicated, you know, multiple times last year. But it's just incredible stuff like that happens, and we're forever grateful.
Man, we are grateful for what you're doing. You know, Peach has said it, but I'll echo it. Man, Jay, we can't say thanks enough. Like this does hit close to home for us. You know, obviously the Air Force connection is there, but the wider veterans, you refuse to let them be broken veterans that live in this terrible place. You help them find a way out of that darkness using your own trauma, which is not easy. you having to share that story about the teammates that you lost at Bagram shortly after I redeployed out of there earlier in that year. Like, we know that in the community, and we know, that trauma and those feelings it can bring up. So the fact that you're willing to be open and honest and vulnerable and share that trauma in order to help other veterans, man, that's a huge deal. We always try to end on some advice, right? So for folks that are trying to get into the Air Force, folks that are trying to do something absolutely impossible, whether it's AFSPEC war or your crazy story and your crazy progression throughout your career, what advice would you have for folks that are looking to do something more and that want to try to do something impossible?
Say yes to opportunities. And wherever you find yourself in your Air Force career, there's always an opportunity waiting. Just seek it out and say yes. And the biggest thing is enjoy the ride. If you try to make expectations for what your military career is going to be, you're going to be disappointed. But if you sit back, live in the moment, and you enjoy the ride, you're in for a fantastic career, serving your nation, serving your communities. And to me, there's no better way to live a life.
Crushed it. That's what we call good content.
SERE.
Security Forces, SERE, soft SERE, because it doesn't exist. Jay, thanks so much for coming out. Go check out Endex Archery over at indexarchery.org. Make sure you're checking that donate button. Follow Security Hall to follow the fundraiser for right now. Be aware of the upcoming events that Jay was just talking about. Make sure you go out and support them. Awesome organization, Jay. Open invite. You come on anytime you want. If you got anything that you need to put out or you got an upcoming event, it's an easy yes. We appreciate you coming on. Everybody else out there, hit the link tree for everything that you need to find us. Go to the website over at onesready.com. We appreciate you coming along for this great episode. Jay, thanks one more time, brother.
And I appreciate you guys and everything you're doing to prepare, the future of our Air Force. Love you guys.
All right. Train hard, everybody.
Light up.
Later.